Alright, so here's the second chapter of this unit. Here we're going to talk about, so here it's just talking about balance. Balance meaning homeostasis. Our kidneys are trying to maintain the balance of the nutrients that we have in our body, the ions, the vitamins, and minerals. Body fluids are not uniformly distributed, meaning that they contain different types of ions. Intracellular fluid refers to fluid inside of our cells. Extracellular fluid, this includes the interstitial fluid and the plasma in the blood. There is a difference between the composition of extracellular and the intracellular fluids. Extracellular fluids have more sodium, chlorine, calcium, bicarbonate ions. Intracellular fluids instead have more potassium, sulfate, phosphate, magnesium. So now we're going to talk about the water balance, a very big important function of our kidneys. Water balance exists when water intake equals water output. And so homeostasis requires control of these, and our kidneys are definitely controlling the water output. Water intake, we gain water by drinking water, drinking other fluids, but also we get some water from the food that we eat. We have this very important region in our brain, in the hypothalamus. Okay, so put a big star there, the thirst center. Thirst center senses if you don't have enough water in the body, if you're dehydrated, you have high osmolality, meaning high saltiness. And so the thirst center makes you want to drink more water. It creates thirst. But another function, it releases the hormone ADH. And ADH to increase the water reabsorption so you can send the water back to the body. In the hypothalamus, the osmoreceptor ADH mechanism regulates the concentration of urine produced in the kidney. And so during dehydration, not enough water, excess water loss causes these special cells, these osmoreceptors, to lose water and shrink. So it's basically signaling them or stimulating them. And so as a result, ADH is secreted by the hypothalamus. Well, remember, it's made by the hypothalamus and released by the posterior pituitary. But so again, ADH increases the permeability of the water to come out of the collecting ducts and to go into the capillaries so that you can send the water to the body. So the water balance disorders, so dehydration, of course, is a big one, not getting enough water. Water intoxication would be the opposite, too much water intake. So it can lead to low blood level of sodium, and it's going to cause imbalance of the electrolytes. And then edema refers to tissue fluid buildup. And it can be caused by a decrease in plasma proteins. So this would be if there is malnutrition, not enough proteins can cause edema. Obstruction of lymphatic vessels, increased permeability, that could be caused by different medications. So electrolyte balance is the next one. Electrolytes we get from the foods that we eat, the fluids we take in. Metabolic reactions also produce some electrolytes. And then we lose these electrolytes through perspiration, feces, and urine. But so our body is trying to maintain a balance. Here are some of the different electrolytes that we need in our body. And so most of these are obtained from foods, beverages. Usually a person obtains sufficient electrolytes by responding to hunger and thirst. But of course, if there is malnutrition, primary malnutrition, if the person's not getting enough nutrients, or secondary malnutrition, if the person's not able to absorb these electrolytes or these other nutrients. Okay, so regulation of the electrolyte output. Concentrations of especially the positively charged ions are very important for our body because these lead to the electrical signaling, both in our muscles and in our nervous system. So very, very important for us as nerve impulse conduction, muscle fiber contraction, and also cell membrane permeability. So the important thing here, know the hormone aldosterone. Aldosterone regulates sodium potassium ion concentrations. Okay, so having too much potassium stimulates the secretion of aldosterone, and having too little sodium also stimulates the secretion. And so aldosterone is then going to lead to secretion of potassium and reabsorption of sodium. Decrease in plasma calcium levels stimulates the release of this other hormone, the parathyroid hormone, or PTH, if you remember, was the abbreviation for that. And PTH then increases the calcium reabsorption in our body. A lot of this, some negative ions can be reabsorbed and others are secreted. Okay, so once again, aldosterone, know that it's released by the adrenal glands. It leads to sodium reabsorption and potassium secretion. PTH instead, released by the parathyroid glands, and this increases the calcium reabsorption. And so here are some disorders associated with this. But next, let's go into the acid-base regulation. So acids are electrolytes that when you put them in water, they dissociate and release hydrogen ions. But bases instead, they take away the hydrogen ions from the solution. And so the more acidic the solution, remember, the lower its pH, the higher the pH, the more alkaline it is. The normal pH in our body, in our blood, is between 7.35 and 7.45. Sources of the hydrogen ions, we get the hydrogen ions from the breakdown of glucose, both from the aerobic and the anaerobic, the oxidation of fatty acids, sulfur-containing amino acids, and also nucleic acids, phosphoproteins. And so basically a lot from the nutrients that we consume, but also from the metabolic breakdown. Now, having the blood too acidic is not going to be good. Having it too alkaline or basic is not good either. But you need to have a normal pH range in between that 7.35 and 7.45. And so, three main ways to regulate the acid-base balance. So here it says the acid-base buffer system, then the respiratory system also works, and the kidneys. Okay, so we already learned about the buffer systems. Buffers help neutralize both the acids and the bases. And so these help to stabilize the pH of a solution, and they're minimizing the pH changes. The most common one is the bicarbonate carbonic acid buffer system. So in this case, the bicarbonate and the carbonic acid, one part of it is acting as an acid, and the other part is acting as a base. And so if the blood becomes too acidic, the bicarbonates are going to neutralize the acid. But if our blood becomes too basic, then the acid part is going to neutralize that alkalinity or the base. And here are some two other ones, phosphate buffer system, protein buffer system. And again, they're just trying to minimize the pH change. And this is just the table showing these different buffers. Okay, so then next, the respiratory system. This should be reviewed. We already learned about this. Respiratory center controls the acid-base balance by controlling the rate and depth of breathing. So remember, increased production of CO2 leads to more hydrogen ions and more acidity. Well, this increase in free hydrogens lowers the pH. And as a result, so let's put a big star here, in response to increased acidity, we are going to increase our breathing, the rate and depth, so that we can get rid of the CO2 and as a result, get rid of the hydrogen ions. Okay, so then next, our kidneys are doing a lot of this acid-base balance. Our nephrons help regulate the hydrogen ion concentration of the body fluids by getting rid of secreting hydrogen ions. Okay, so our kidneys are putting more hydrogen ions into the urine rather than sending the hydrogen ions to the body. And so usually the problem is the blood becomes acidic because of the metabolic wastes that are being produced from the fluids and the nutrients that we take. So yeah, the problem is usually the blood is acidic and the kidneys get rid of the hydrogen ions through the urine. And it would be the opposite if the blood is basic. If the blood is basic, then you would increase hydrogen ion reabsorption. So the renal excretion of the hydrogen ions, so it's just saying that proteins, when we break down proteins, we turn them into amino acids. But then breaking down the amino acids causes sulfuric acid, phosphoric acid, uric acid, and so these are all acids. And so it's just saying here, the kidneys are then going to excrete or secrete the hydrogen ions in the urine. And also here, reabsorption of bicarbonates will also occur. Because this is the more base or the alkaline, and so if you send more of the base, the alkaline, back to the body, it will lower the acidity of the blood. Acid-base imbalances, so acidosis meaning if the blood becomes more acidic, alkalosis if it becomes more basic. But so again, that normal pH range should be between 7.35 and 7.45. Okay, so again, acidosis, it says here when the pH is lowered below 7.35, and alkalosis when it goes above. Two major types of acidosis: respiratory acidosis, caused by an increase in carbon dioxide, and as a result, it increases first the carbonic acid and the hydrogen ion levels. Metabolic acidosis, accumulation of other acids, loss of bases, so this would be more from the metabolic waste that accumulate in our body. Major types of alkalosis: respiratory alkalosis. This would be due to excess loss of CO2. Hyperventilation would cause this. Hyperventilation gets rid of a lot of CO2 from the body. Metabolic alkalosis would be excess loss of hydrogens or a gain in bases. So then this slide just talks about the different examples and how the body can, or what the body can do to compensate for either alkalosis or acidosis. So here that first example talks about if you take too much antacids, it's going to lead to your blood becoming more alkaline, basic. And so what does the body do? And then the second one is showing for the respiratory acidosis due to pulmonary disease. So if the lungs are not working properly. Well, if they're not working properly, then the kidneys have to compensate for this acid-base balance.